Exercise 3. In this exercise, we're going to take a look at the functionality inside SolidWorks 2016 with regards to creating this ratchet body that you see here. So let's begin. First of all, we're going to build the head of the ratchet, then the transition section, and finally the handle. I'm going to start off with the new part file. I'm in IPS for inch pound second. Also note at the bottom, if you ever need to change the units, you can change it right here, and edit document units brings you there automatically. Very similar to just going up to the tools options and setting what you need there. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and select the front plane and start a sketch. I'm going to go and I'm going to take the center line tool, hit the little arrow to the right of the line tool, find center line, lock into the origin. When you get the orange dot, click and drag out a vertical line about an inch and a half or 2 inches, and then hit escape. Now take the line tool and glide up just to the left of the origin. Take careful note where my pointer is currently, right about there. Click and drag like a 1-inch line at a slight angle to the upper left, as you see what I have. Click and then hit escape. Now we're going to look at the mirror tool. There's a couple things you could do with the mirror entities. You could actually just click and drag a fence to surround both entities. In this case, there's only one center line, so it makes it very easy for SolidWorks to just go ahead and mirror this. And you can see it mirrored it over. Now, rather than what some strategies are with new users where they draw circles, as an example, what not to do is where people draw circles like this. And then they go ahead and they draw the lines and they trim, and that's just a lot of work. Don't bother doing it that way. And here you could draw this without even using the trim tool in most cases. So over here in the upper left, we go to the arc tools, hit the little arrow to the right of the arc tools, and you're looking for tangent arc. Tangent arc automatically makes a tangent off of one point. Go ahead and click and drag it over the top and drag it to the other point. Click. Go ahead and do the same here. Click on the bottom vertex, drag it to the other one, and kind of go loop around versus go straight across, because sometimes that might transition to a different type of arc. But there we have our arc. Now we could go to the Smart Dimension tool and select the arc and dimension the bottom at 0.6 and the top at 0.75. Now you might notice that I'm at 2 decimal places. This is where we could use our little IPS button and edit document units. And then over here we could go ahead and specify 3 decimal places and hit OK. All right. I'm going to go ahead and then put one more dimension in. I'm going to dimension between the centers of the arcs. Now, sometimes it's difficult to see the centers if you're not looking carefully, so it's just easier sometimes to select the arc itself. Click on this arc at the bottom, click on this arc at the top. It automatically defaults to the centers. Move your pointer to the right and center the dimension, and just make that 0.75. Now you could hit escape on your keyboard, and you'll notice that this center point is floating. It's not attached to the origin, and that's what we want to attach. So there's a couple things you could do. You could, first of all, you might want to zoom up. You could scroll and zoom up to it, or you could hit the F key for zoom to fit. And then to get this, if it's overlapping the line, it's drawn way up here, grab this bottom arc and just with the left mouse button depressed, drag it down and up, and you'll see it will move freely. Then once it's moved away, you could go ahead and grab that center point, drag it far and away. Note that if it's really close to the origin and you try and drag it, it doesn't move. Again, this the technology really wants you to drag it, just drag it far distances and drag it back. It'll snap a little bit easier than it normally would. Okay. You'll see it becomes fully defined. The geometry turns black, and that's good. That's exactly what we want. Let's go to Features, Extrude Boss Base. Now in the manual, I'm just going to bring up here, we need to extrude it 1 inch with 7 degrees of draft on both sides. So over here under Blind on the left, hit the little arrow and select mid-plane. This divides it equally on both sides. So if it's 1 inch, it's going to be 1/2 inch on one side of the plane, another 1/2 inch on the other side. So in this case, we want it to be 1 inch. But don't forget to click on this button on the left, draft on off. Click on that and set it to 7 degrees. Note there is a draft outward switch. I don't want you to use that right now because if you were to set that, look at what you get. You don't want that. So make sure draft outward is disabled. It should not be checked. Hit the green check mark. Let's put a recess in here for a cover plate. Select this face and start a sketch. You can do this in isometric view, or if you prefer, you could hit your space bar and go normal too. But while this face is selected, let's use the Offset Entities tool. This is a tool we have not yet used through the other chapter, so it's a very good tool to learn. Offset Entities selects the edges of the geometry that you've selected, like in this case the faces, but you can select edges, whatever you want, or other sketches too to offset them. But here you see a preview. It's offsetting them outward. It actually needs to be offset by 0.125. And then check the reverse box. Make sure there's a check in there. Sometimes you click on it, it just activates the box. The second click actually stays and checks it in. Okay, hit the green check mark. You could see this dimension of 0.125. If you double click on it, you could change it if you wanted to. It always remains there. Now we just go to Features, Extruded Cut. Make sure you select Extruded Cut to remove the material. Do not select Extruded Boss Base. Extruded Cut. Thus, we could put in 0.125 for the recess and hit the green check mark. We will not be adding draft on this as it's a machine feature technically. Okay, now we could go ahead and select that floor of that recess. Go ahead and select this face and start a sketch. Now this one might be easier done if we hit the space bar and either click on the front face here, or click on front right here, or normal too, any of the above. Okay, let's go to the circle tool, and from the origin, it's very easy to find the center of this arc. Draw out an arc about 0.3, maybe 0.325-ish, around there. Okay, now for this one, it's not so easy to find the center. So here's a little trick. Move the pointer to the edge of the arc that you want to find the center to. This works every time. Once it highlights it, I didn't click now. Be aware I did not click. Once it highlights, you will see the center point wake up, and now you could just move your pointer over there. Now you could go ahead and click and drag out your circle. Intersect the two. Don't get them tangent to each other like this. You don't want that. Intersect them so they're just slightly intersecting like that, so you get the little football in between. Now, let's go ahead and go to Trim Entities. Trim entities, there are several different types of trim. In this case, there's power trim or trim to closest. Let's try trim to closest first. And just click on what you don't want. So in this case, that bottom part of that little football, the toric that's in there, click on it. You'll see it disappears. If you want, try a power trim. Power trim's a little different. You just move your pointer in the region you want to erase, and it's just kind of like, imagine you're erasing it with a dry eraser. And you're just clicking and dragging through where the eraser would path. And then it removes that geometry in between. So I'm just holding the left mouse button down as I drag that. Okay, I'm going to lighten my screen up a little bit. If I hit this little arrow, you'll see there's different types of floors and things like that. Plain white brightens up a little bit, easier to see. Hit the green check mark in the upper left. Okay, now from here I could go to Smart Dimension and put the dimensions in. Now in this case, I'm getting a radial dimension. As you might have remembered in the earlier versions, the earlier exercises that we've gone through, SolidWorks, if it doesn't detect a full circle, it gives you a radius. So if you want to convert that, because that's important, especially if it's going to go out in the shop and this is going to be machined, so they can pick the proper size reamer. Again, you know, they might be working very quickly. You might want to give them a diameter solution instead. And so what you have the ability to do here is, in this case, you can see it's 0.35 and 0.5. Let me first change this to 0.35, and then I'll dimension this at 0.5, and then I'll show you what you could do. When they're selected like this, you could go over to Leaders, and right here you have diameter. Try that with the 0.35. Click on that. Oops. Okay, and I'm going to hit escape. One click. It's actually in a mode where it's there we go. I wanted to get the properties up there. You could either right click as well to do this. Here, there we go. Go to liters and diameter. You could also right click, and there's options in there. Okay, so now go to features and extruded cut. And we're going to cut this pocket. Let's take a look at the manual here. The depth of 0.75. So go ahead and type in 0.75 and hit the green check. Again, it's cut extrude. If you don't have it in cut extrude, cancel it. Go to cut extrude. Otherwise, you're just going to build material on top of material. It'll just okay. Let's go ahead and select the floor of that pocket and start a sketch. Again, normal 2 might be a good option, or click on the front plane after you hit the space bar. And let's put 2 circles in. Or we'll just put 1 in actually. Click and at the center, drag out your circle and dimension it. Okay, in this case, it's going to be, let me just check my 0.375. Okay. Now, I'm going to go ahead and cut this. I'm going to go to Extrude Cut and select Through All. Okay, so now I have that there. Now what I can do, if I hold the Control key, I could drag off an additional copy. Actually, I'll do it from the feature tree here. I'm going to hold Control and drag this right on that surface. So I'm holding Control and the left mouse button. Both are depressed at the same time. Control is the one you want to click on first and hold it, and then you could go ahead and drag it from the feature tree. Release the mouse button first, and then you can release Control. And it's going to tell you there are external relations. Do you want to delete them or leave them dangling? The external relation it's referring to is most likely the center point that was locked into the center of the arc below. If you leave it dangling, you could reattach it. It gives you a little red block. I'm just going to hit delete, and then I want to show you how to edit that. So you can see clearly as you rotate it, it's not centered. So what I want to do is I'm going to right click on that cut extrude in the feature tree, that cut extrude 4, and you'll see edit sketch. Click on that. Now here you could grab the center with the left mouse button, drag it around. What you could do to wake that up again, just like we learned earlier, drag it to an edge. Don't release it yet, just wake up that center point. Now you could drag it back, release it, and hit the rebuild button at the top. Rebuild regenerates the model with the changes made. And there it is. Okay, let's go ahead and put the fillets on. Go to the fillet tool and set it to 0.1 and select this edge and this edge. Hit the green check. Now what we're going to do is we're going to make the transition section. So go to, in this case, the top plane and click 1 time, but don't start a sketch. Instead, I'd like to show you how to offset a plane and make a new one off of it. So the top plane is centered, and that's a great place to draw a sketch. Unfortunately, it's not in the center of the model. It isn't. We want that to be offset the length of the transition section, which is 4 inches. So with that selected, if you go to the reference geometry button up here, click on the little arrow and find plane. It'll take a minute, but then you can see it will pop up, and you'll see that you get this little arrow and a plane showing up. Now what you want to do is you could either drag this, grab the little arrowhead and drag it. I'm having a little tough time there getting that to work. That's okay. I'm going to go over here and type in 4 for 4 inches and flip the offset. Check the little box, flip offset. And then if you zoom out, you should be able to see it's down below. Hit the green check mark. Now you can select that edge of that new plane you just created and start a sketch. Again, you could draw an isometric if you want, maybe zoom up to it, or you could go normal too. Either one's fine. Click on circle, and at the origin, that origin is a projection of the original origin in the center of the model. So as long as you centered everything, you're in good shape. Click and drag a circle out, and now just go to Smart Dimension and dimension that circle at a 1/2 inch, so 0.5. Now we could go ahead and go to Features, Extrude Emboss Base. Now, if we were to go in here, we might have a little bit of a tough time finding exactly where that stops without intersecting the model like we see here. Instead of just going with blind, try selecting up to next. Now, if up to next isn't available, that means your extrusion's in the wrong direction typically. But if it's available, that means you're pretty good to go, and you could go ahead and select it. It will go up to the next body and intersect with it, combining the two. Go ahead and hit the green check mark. Now you could hide that plane. Any plane you could hide or show, you just right click on it, and there's a little little eyeball with a line through it. Click on that, and that will hide it. Now select the front plane and start a sketch. Hit your space bar and go normal to the front, or you could go normal too. Either one is fine. Now I'm going to zoom out a little bit because we need to make the handle section. On the handle section, I'm going to show you a little trick here. There's a dozen ways to do this. This is just one. It's a modeling technique. Go to corner rectangle, and over here on the right, just kind of drag out a rectangle. Don't worry too much about the size. Let's go ahead and add smart dimensions to it. It's going to be, oops, don't select the points. There we go. All right, let's go to smart dimension again. There we go. Okay, it should be 4 inches by 1 inch. Now go to the center line tool. Hit the little arrow to the right of line, find center line, lock into that middle, drag out a center line, hit escape. And if you right click, remember you could go to a quick launch of smart dimension, or you could go back to smart dimension up there. Dimension this at 3.75. The reason why I'm making it 3.75 is because we're going to add draft on it. If you made it 4, it would be sitting on the outside and only a little sliver would be contacting that surface, intersecting the two. So we need to dig it in a little bit. Hit the green check mark, and now here's what you do. Hit escape a couple times, make sure nothing's selected. Grab this top vertex, hold the left mouse button down and drag it to the red origin. When it snaps to it with the blue dot, release it, and it's fully defined and locked in position. And it's centered. Now let's go to features, extrude boss base, and again, instead of blind, select mid plane. It's only going to go 3/4 of an inch, so 0.75, and turn on the draft tool. It should remember the 7 degrees of draft, and that's good. Hit the green check mark. Now let's put some fillets on that handle. Go to the fillet tool, and again, the 0.1 fillet is fine. Select the 4 edges, excluding this one right here, because that's the parting line. If you want, you could fillet it. I guess it doesn't really matter. And hit the green check mark. Now go to the fillet tool and make a smaller fillet, 0.03. Select this edge and this bottom edge. Notice it doesn't follow through all the way around because I didn't fillet this edge, and tangent propagation means that it has to have a radius to continue around the track. In this case, as a sharp edge, it stops. So you have to select those edges. And finally, go ahead and select right in the middle of the surface. This is one of the benefits. Not all CAD systems do this, but you can select that surface and it will fillet all of those edges of that surface. Go ahead and hit the green check mark. Okay, make sure you save this as E3. Let's move on to engraving some text on here. Select your face on that handle, start a sketch, and go to the right view orientation. Oh, I'm sorry. Front. Now, holding your Alt key on your keyboard, the Alt key is right next to the space bar. Hit your left arrow key 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. That's just a quick shortcut key. Alt and the arrow keys rotates clockwise or counterclockwise. Now you could zoom up to that area right there. Just scroll and point. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go with the centerline tool up here. We don't want our text, SolidWorks does not center the text from the center of the actual font. It's from the base, so we need to draw a line across, just like you would if you were drafting in the old days on a board. Draw a little line. Notice it's offset a little bit. It's not in the center. It's not at the bottom edge. And then over here, just get a position where you like it. because your text is going to be scribbled on there. Okay, now when that's done, select that edge after you hit escape. Select the actual line and go to the A button up here, which is text. Now the text is going to follow that curve, that line that you just drew. And so I'm going to go ahead and type in SolidWorks. You'll notice that it's justified to the left, just as it shows here, left align. You could center it, you could justify it to the right, or you could spread it out. Now I'm going to go to choose whichever one you prefer. If you're making it inverted for like a mold or something, note that you can flip vertically and backwards. Okay. All right, turn off Use Document Font, this little checkbox, and go to the Font button underneath. You'll see that you could choose virtually any object or true type font. It will take from all your fonts directory. So you might not have the same fonts that I do, just be aware of that. But you could go in and you could select one that you like. And the curly ones don't always work well, so stick with something that's bold typically, but don't use the bold over here. The oblique is fine, but the bold is has some issues. What happens is that it spreads it out, and then unfortunately sometimes intersecting geometry occurs, and thus it's no longer like a watertight solid condition. It can't cut it. Alright, so I picked one here. I'm going to go with oblique. Remember, don't go with the bolds. Those usually screw it up more than anything. Okay, now as far as the points, you can set it to points, or in this case I want it to be 1/4 of an inch. And if you click on oblique again, it resets it so you can kind of see a preview. And hit OK. Now in this case, it's just too big. It won't fit. So I'm going to have to go to Font again and choose something a little bit less wide. Let's see here. The scripts don't work very well all the time, and if you do a script, be aware that you probably will need to change it a little bit. Okay, that one works pretty well. In fact, actually, I can make it a little bit bigger. I'm going to go with 0.375. Okay, now I'm going to go to Features. Actually, first hit the green check mark. And if you want to center it even more, you could, after you hit Escape, you could grab this and relocate it till you get it centered. Or you could use dimensional measurements to lock it in. Now just go to, if you want an embossed, raised, select Extrude Boss. If you want an engraved, select Extrude Cut. I'll engrave it. And just set it to 0.02. So 20 thousandths deep. And hit the green check mark. And there you can see the engraved text. Alright, let's take a look at the bottom side. Let's say we want to make little notches here for like our little knuckles, like so we could grip it a little bit better. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select the right plane from the feature tree and start a sketch. I'm going to go normal 2. I'm going to hit the space bar, go normal 2. Alright, and I'm going to hit my arrow key left to right just to see what's going on here. Okay, that looks good. I know which one is the bottom now. So I just hit my arrow keys left once and then went back to the right once just because I wanted to see where the text was. I know now that I have to be on this right side. So I'm going to take the circle tool and I'm just going to position this like so. I'm going to go to Smart Dimension. I'm going to make it 0.4. And I'm going to locate it center to this point, 0.25. Actually, I better make that 0.3. Okay, and then one more dimension. Select this and then go to the center of the model and dimension that at 0.45. Okay, now you can see we're in the center. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to Features, Extruded Cut. And, oops, I selected Cut Revolved. Sorry, Extruded Cut. There we go. And then you want through all, both. And you could just hit the green check mark. Okay, so we have our little scallop cutout. Go ahead and select that. Go to, now we're going to use the linear pattern tool. If you hit this little arrow, you'll see there's several ways to make patterns. We want linear patterns. Select that. The trick to a linear pattern is select an edge in the direction you want it to travel. So like this edge right here would be perfect. Oh, let's, for direction actually, let's clear that out and select this edge. Direction 2 don't worry about because we're only going in one direction. Okay, and then the features and faces, select that little box and click on this. Now you can already see a pattern forming, and right here you could adjust it by just bumping this little arrowhead up until you get it to where you like it. So let's say we want it to be a 1/2 inch positioned away from each other, and then over here this is the number of instances including the one that you started with. Okay, so you have the ability to tinker with that a little bit. And then hit the green check mark, and there's our cutouts. Now you can fillet those too. Just go to the fillet tool. We'll go with 0.02, and then you could just select the faces. We could pattern this as well. It's just good practice though to fillet. And that concludes this exercise. The labs that are associated with it, you're welcome to try on your own. If you want, stay on this video and I will go through them in just about a second here. So otherwise you could pause and try them on your own and then watch them later, or whichever one you want to do. Okay, let's get started. The first lab, which is on page 44, looks like a key cover. So, and it, believe it or not, this encompasses almost everything we learned today. So what we're going to do is we're going to make this. Okay, so I'm going to start with a new part file. I'll do this on the top plane. I'll start a sketch, and I'm going to draw just like we started off with a center line. Whenever anything's symmetric, always think center lines. They're very useful. Draw that little line at this angle, and select the whole group and mirror it over. So really this is just a rehash of what we did earlier. Now you could go to tangent arc, click on this corner to this corner. Be careful, tangent arc is not, you don't want the top to be tangent. This is a little different. It's going to look a bit bigger. So what I would recommend is actually using the 3-point arc. Click and drag clear across to click here, 3-point arc, that's the way it works. Make it really big and click like that. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and we're going to add some dimensions to this. So this bottom dimension here, let's look at the print, is 0.6 and the top is 1.5. All right, now you can zoom back up to it and squeeze these dimensions in so you can see things a little bit better. And then finally, the dimension here between the two is 2 inches. So dimension from arc to arc, 2. And then you have to put in an angle dimension. So this goes back, this is 35 degrees from this. Oops, I didn't want that. Actually hit escape if that happens to you. Go back to smart dimension. Don't get those center points by accident. Okay, and this is 35. And we could actually just position it now. So I'm going to hit escape and grab the center point and drag it to the origin. And when it snaps blue, you lock it in. If it turns black, you're in good shape. Okay, now we're going to extrude that. So go to Features, Extrude Boss. And that needs to be an extrusion depth of 0.61. And there's draft on it. So let's take a look at the draft. The typical draft is 16 degrees. So over here, turn on your draft, type in 16, hit enter, and hit the green check mark. Now there's 2 fillets that need to be added, a radius of a 1/2 inch and a radius of 0.25. Sometimes you need to, a lot of times with filleting, order of operations is very important, just like mathematics, because behind the scenes it is mathematics, the underlying code. So Let's try our large one first, 0.5. Select this edge. And when you don't see a full preview and you have full preview selected, that's not a good thing. That means it's probably going to fail. In fact, if I hit the green check mark, it gives me a warning, failed to create that fillet. And most likely it's due to, see it's highlighting this edge here. So hit close, and let's right click and clear that selection. Let's go with the smaller one of 0.25. Select this edge, and then you could go to multiple radius fillet and select this edge. And then this one you could set differently to 0.5. And there it is. All right, let's flip it around the back. Select this face, start a sketch, and use the offset entities. We will not use the shell tool on this one. The offset is 0.1, which is the default, so just hit reverse and the green check mark. Go to Features, Extrude Cut, and this is supposed to be 0.25 deep for the cut, and it needs the same 16 degrees of draft inward. Hit the green check and apply. Now the details in here. Select this face, start a sketch, go ahead and draw the through hole. Find the edge, wake it up just by moving over it, drag out your dimension, and let's double check what that is supposed to be. In this case it's 1 inch through and does not specify draft. Oops, not 0.1, 1.0. Okay, and then go to Features, Extrude Cut, Through All. And now the little keyway area. Select this face, start your sketch, and let's go normal 2. And we will use that little trick I showed you earlier. Draw a little rectangle over here to the left. Go to the center line tool and draw a little center line at the bottom there. Go to Smart Dimension. The width of this is supposed to be 0.25. The length of this little line, oops, I got that little endpoint again. Right click. Boy, it's really a problem today. 0.25. And then the overall length, you could just make this about 2 inches, because as long as it doesn't bleed into that, actually maybe 1.5. And let's hit escape. Now just drag that over, drop it right there. We just don't want it to get too large where it overlaps into this and cuts that. If it's just cutting air here, we're in good shape. So you could go to Features, Extrude Cut, and it's only 0.25 for the depth, no draft. Now as for the text, select this face, start a sketch, and go normal 2. And let's go ahead and we're going to use, not the circle, try using center point arc this time. Center point arc is a nice tool. You just wake up the center of whatever you want to center to, click here, drag it around kind of like a rainbow. Let's see if we could wake that up. If you get it, you just keep going around until you get it to lock in like so. Okay, one thing though, here's a trick. It has to be dashed or construction geometry. So over here on the left, while it's still selected, check the little box for construction. Hit escape. By the way, if you hit escape, if you need to change it later, you could click on it anytime. There's the construction geometry. There it is too. So you could transform these anytime. Drag this down a little bit and actually smart dimension it at 0.6. And then click on the arc and click on the 2 endpoints of the arc. And it should be 1.25. And that's good enough for right now. It really doesn't matter too much on this, but I'm just partially constraining it. All right, now go to the A text tool. The arc is selected. Go ahead and type in ECC EDU. And again, if you want to use a different document font, otherwise this one's fine. I'm just going to use this one and hit the green check. And I'll go to Features, Extrude Cut, and 0.02 is a good one to go with. It's a very shallow depth. All right, now finally, what I want to show you on this one, it calls out that it should be brass. So over here on materials, you could right click on it and go to edit materials, and instead of steel, hit the little arrow and find there's all different types of alloys and things like that in here. There under copper alloys, you'll find brass. Go ahead and select brass and hit apply and close, and you'll see it will take upon the properties of brass that you see there. And also the benefit to that, you could find out exactly how much it weighs at any time. If you go to the evaluate tab, you could go to mass properties, and it actually picks up the mass properties on that part. In this case, we're at 0.7 pounds of brass. So you could figure out how much that's going to cost. Okay, moving on to the next lab. Save that as lab 3, and then now lab 3B. It's like a frisbee kind of deal, frisbee or hat. Okay, and in this case, we'll start a new part file, and this is a review of last week's lesson, which was revolve features. Just select the front plane, start a sketch, take your centerline tool, and draw a vertical centerline. Take the line tool and line yourself a distance away. Draw the angle in, just like you see here, maybe about 1.5 inches. Click, draw a horizontal line across there. Drag this down. Click, drag this across. Click, and look, you could actually follow right there is parallelism. That little symbol to the right of my pointer, a little in yellow, that's a parallel symbol, so it's going to make it parallel to those other lines. Drag this across, and again, I'll infer to that line there, and then we have our geometry. Now it's just a matter of dimensioning it. Do not dimension like we have done in the past where we select these. Notice the actual print suggests parallel dimensions, so from here to here. Okay, and that needs to be 0.375. And then from I got that point again, darn it. Hit escape there. And then from here, and that needs to be set to 2.25. Okay, and you might get something like this to happen. That's okay. Hit escape, grab this line, just drag it over. Now we could add some of the other dimensions. So for, darn it, oh, these little points are very, just getting them today like crazy. So this is 0.25, I believe. And then you just go through and essentially add all the other dimensions as it calls out in the print. And every time it starts doing this, you could go ahead and drag these things out. And finally, this dimension from this point to the center line. And remember, if you drag it to the right of the center line, you get a diameter, which is supposed to be 1 inch. Let's get a couple more dimensions in here. So 1.5 for the height. And 0.25 from the base, from here to here. Let's see what else we have there. Oh, and the angle, 25 degrees. So from here to here, 25. And then finally, this last one, notice it's just floating there. Just click on this line one time to select it, and click on this point and make them coincident. And then it will turn black. It's fully defined. We are ready to go to Features, Revolve Boss Base. Notice I didn't put the fillet in. Oops. Revolve Boss Base. And there we have it. Now you just go to the fillet tool, set it to 0.5, and select this edge. And you're done. And that concludes exercise 3.